the other day. What was your weirdest theology belief? What was your weirdest over time, the weirdest
belief
you've had at theology? That's a fun one that pastors don't talk about enough. But they don't have
I don't have a belief, but I was running with a crew that believed in that uber duper charismatic stuff, walk through walls, teleport. Yeah. I have friends who were like,
As a Christian?
yeah, they were literally. I had two of my really close friends for a certain season. They were in that stream. Think about Bethel.
Yeah.
Bethel 10 years ago, before they became mainstream, they were a lot more extreme. And then two of my closest friends were even more extreme than that. And I remember I was 19, 20, and I would try because I was curious, and I was like, nah, this ain't for me, bro. They would say stuff like, hey, I teleported to China last night, and I was fighting demonic strongholds, and
you didn't bring me back a souvenir.
Yeah, and they would say stuff like, oh, I was talking to Moses last night in the third heavens. I had a group of friends who were in that stream. I didn't myself ever believe it, but I won't lie if I didn't say I was out of curiosity. How do you do that? And they're like, I tried to do this, but it just never worked for me.
Yeah, because you weren't crazy. No disrespect to anyone who's been in the third heavens or whatever.
Bro. You never been in that stream to that extent?
I mean, yes and no. I never met anyone who
You're familiar with the stream, but you never
familiar
have
with
friends.
it. I met people who were passionate about it, maybe more on the gold dust side of things, but never teleportation or anything like that. I knew that existed, but
I
didn't know anyone.
I got a diamond before.
Oh, really?
I don't know if it's real or not, but it
Do you still
happened.
have it?
I lost it.
Should have sold it.
It was at a mission trips in Oaxaca, Mexico, and then we were at a church that believed in that stream.
Yeah.
And during one of our services, a bunch of gold dust, broke out on the pews and people's hands, diamonds and stuff. And then when I got to the airplane, I opened my backpack in the front, and there was 2 diamonds in there. There was a pink one and a regular color one.
That's crazy.
So it's either one or two things. Either somebody opened my backpack,
yeah.
put the 2 diamonds in there, or
it disappeared.
Yeah, my theology doesn't really have room for that. I don't know how to even explain that.
Yeah.
But I was in a service like that. It was a church that we were serving in Oaxaca, Mexico, that had an outbreak of stuff.
If you're in that stream, are you not allowed to sell it because they could have a better building?
I took it. I took it to the jewelers. No, this is what they say. They say it's out of this world. So they're not so I actually took both those jewels to a jewelry shop, and they were like, we don't know what this is. It ain't a real diamond, but we don't know what this is. And I remember when you would hear stories in this.
Yeah.
I am not endorsing this by any way.
Yeah.
But so I don't think they say it's this, but if you take it to the jeweler shop, I don't know if
but they don't think it's plastic.
No, I remember taking mine, and I was so young. This was over 10 years ago now. But I remember the guy was like, "Yeah, I don't really know what this is. This ain't no diamond. We just don't know what this is."
We don't know what this is.
And he just gave it back to me. And so I remember.
And you didn't say oh, you think it's plastic? Would plastic look like
no,
this?
not even tell him where it's from. He said, "Where'd you get it from?" I was like, you don't need to worry about it. Can you imagine? It's just we were worshiping in Jesus, and yeah. So, but that to your question, Jermaine, was not something I believe, but something I was around.
Yeah.
For a good season. I started from the uber duper Pentecostal world.
Yeah.
Like Catherine Kuhlman, John G. Lake, John Alexander Dowie. I don't even know if you guys know those names.
I know the names, but it's not a stream I've ever. Even when I was at Life Pacific, the Foursquare world, Foursquare's kind of their own world of Pentecostalism.
They were mainstream Pentecostalism. For sure. I feel like.
Pentecostals with guardrails, you know.
They were trying to reach the lost. Versus the other Pentecostals that I first got familiar with.
Yeah. Well, because one of the things was, when I was at Life Pacific University, I went there for 2.5 years. and then eventually transferred out to masters.
Oh, so LPU was first.
Yes. Yeah. So essentially what happened was...
I thought you went to masters first, and you're like, no, I got to finish LPU.
No, LPU asked me to leave. I vividly remember, still have a relationship with this professor to this day. We're good friends. I love him. I've tried getting him on this podcast. He'll come on one day, but professor schedules are always strange because we do this during the week. They're teaching during the week. Then when he takes the summer off, he goes with his family. Professor Adams, though, incredible. Dr. Adams, like just Jim Adams. There's 2 Jim Adams at Foursquare, but the professor one, man, he was great. But essentially what happened was, I was at Life. My dad told me at the time, this is back in 2008, he said, hey, because I had said, I went to go intern at a church. So I interned at a church for 6 months. And then I wasn't a fan of everybody's biblical literacy. So I was like, I want to go to college. Because originally I thought, I don't have to go to college to learn the Bible. But that's before, technology really wasn't what it was at. Like people barely were watching YouTube and stuff like that. So, I tell my dad I want to go to college, and he's like, well, ask some friends. He knew I was a Calvinist. He was like, you can only go to this school. It's a Pentecostal school, which was Life. So I didn't have a bad attitude about it per se. I just was like, okay, I want to learn the Bible. Cool. And so I'm there, and there's like...
And you were already drinking that Reform Kool-Aid during that time.
Man,
so you already had that restless Reform.
Yeah, I'm learning Hebrew on my own and Greek on my own. Like, not self-teaching, but like going through books because I'm doing it on my own. I for Christmas that year, I asked for John Calvin's work of commentary. The Institutes. And it's like, 60 books or whatever. I have them all still to this day.
Thousands of pages.
Yeah, thousands. I asked for it, read through it. And I read through it. Institutes of Christian Religion. Read through it on my own at 18 years old. Read every major work of John MacArthur.
You and me were inspired by Spurgeon, how at 18 years old he was preaching to like 10,000 people. I want to be Spurgeon.
I'm like, dude, read lectures
Senior
to my
pastor.
Students over and over, all these things like that.
And then you went to LPU with that
already
as the
knowing stuff.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So I'm there, and I'm like, I'm not publicly, like shaming my professors, but in all the papers that I'm writing with a Calvinistic lens, right? And so I'm there 2.5 years. My professor. So while I'm there, they have like a spiritual gift class where they teach about prophecy and tongues and all that. It was led by a professor called Karen Tremper. There were a couple Calvinist friends that I had while I was there, and we would call it the School of Dark Arts. And we didn't take the class or anything like that. So that whole experience happened. Jim Adams, who would stay after class. He would take me to Starbucks, wrestle stuff with me and all that kind of stuff like that. Eventually he said, Adam, you're welcome to be here as long as you want, but I don't think you're getting anything from it. I think you should consider transferring out and leaving because you're in every class. I'm not disrespectful, but when you're in college and you're encouraged, especially you're in Bible school. So a lot of it is conversational in what you're learning. And so when I'm disagreeing with 90% of the class. But one of the things that used to happen is because I was like the only Calvinist on the whole, class. And back 08, 09, 2010, the big Reformation movement was once again bubbling up. Yeah. So, Matt Chandler and Driscoll and then Piper and then all the way to the right, you got MacArthur and Bauckham and like more of the extreme and Steve Lawson and all that kind of stuff like that, which that's the stream I was in. Like I didn't like Driscoll. I didn't care much for Francis Chan. Yeah. It was like these dudes, like they're serious about it.
Bauckham. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So students, peers would come to my dorm room at night to debate. They would pick a topic. They would just knock on the door, Adam, I got a topic. And then, because I was the only one in the whole school that differed pretty much from everybody. And so they all just wanted to debate, which is why today, like, I'm not, though my degree, like what I studied, because eventually I go to master's and I study apologetics because my passion was defending the faith and theology. I ended up learning really early on, like, Bible scholarship is not my passion. Theology is my passion. So then, like, But by time I get out of school, I'm so debated out, because then I go to masters and I end up swaying left and becoming a little more charismatic, at least sympathetically charismatic. So then I'm debating everybody there. By the time I'm out of school, I've already had more debates than the average Christian will have in their whole life.
Yeah, because you were always the odd one out.
Always.
What do you call that? People that just have to be against? There's that word for that.
Devil's advocate.
Devil's advocate, but there's like
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
yeah, like it's just a temperament where like you're always not disagreeable, but it's like there's a specific word I forget. People will figure it out in the chats.
Yeah. So like by the time I'm done, I'm just like, people are like, let's debate. I was just like, no, why? You know, I've done it so many times. What do you know, what? And I've done it so many times that my degree is in debate. Like, you know, you have to be such a good debater yourself, or else I'm just going to look like a bully, you know, so to say. So I just got so jaded from it. Other than like, I like discussing Islam, Catholicism, Mormonism.
If it's for like salvation, and you're trying to win people to Christ. But you feel like at this point in your stage of life, it feels like a waste of time to argue and debate with people within our faith, because you're like, there's more important things out there that you got to focus on.
Exactly. And there's way more, to me, I'm like, we could do it for fun, but I'm like, there's way more stuff that we're for than we're against. And so like the last true debate I was in was like, I think it was it 2 years ago? 2 years. You know the story about Jonathan Pokluda?
Yeah, with JP.
Yeah.
Young Guns, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you told me about
but
this.
I don't think we've ever shared it on the podcast.
I just saw him on the Young Guns list. He's coming to the one.
Oh, is he coming back?
June.
Yeah. So since we've become friends, we see each other all the time at stuff. At the time we were not that we weren't friends anonymously. We just didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him. So for context, those that don't know Jonathan Pokluda, you know, more in the all around, but kind of say white evangelical space, but you know, also non-white. But like he does all these like college crusades and just, but kind of in the Baptist world, he's probably like the biggest millennial name in the Baptist world. And so he does all the biggest conferences in America, kind of in the Baptist stream. So we have a mutual friend who aligns a little bit more theologically. And I think since JP has kind of changed some views on stuff, but lines more theologically kind of where I'm at. And it was particularly women in ministry. At the time, I think JP has softened his view on some of these things. But at the time, if I remember correctly, it was JP didn't believe, you know, women could teach or preach, or it was something along that line. I don't want to misrepresent. It's been some years now, but we just differed. And my friend said, "Hey, this is this guy JP who's going to be at this thing. He kind of he likes debating and blah 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 blah,
pushing the envelope."
Yeah, and he was like, and so I'm going to try to, you know, create an atmosphere, right, where you guys can. So all of a sudden, I'm just having lunch, and he our mutual friend texts me, JP's up here. They're talking about women in ministry. There's like 10 guys come up here. So I'm just like, I didn't even look forward to debating. I was just like, okay, I'm going to go up. So I go up, and for probably 2 hours.
Oh, you guys actually went at it.
Oh, yeah.
Boom,
Like
boom,
Bible's
boom,
out,
boom, boom.
you know, like turned into 30 guys watching,
Everyone
spectating. Because I don't know that
funny.
JP's like bigger than sliced bread.
I don't.
You know?
I didn't know who JP was until like a year ago.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
I mean, you could go look at, you know, Spotify in the
He's just a
top
different
religion
stream for
podcasts.
us.
He's got a high,
He's a good
he's got
dude.
one of the most viewed podcasts, Christian podcasts in America.
He's a good dude.
Very influential voice, very much the real deal, right? Yeah. And so I'm sitting there, well, boom, 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 and it goes to women ministry, then it goes into LGBTQ and stuff like that, and so 2 hours goes by, boom, 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 and we're done. It finishes. He leaves. Like 5 guys came up to me and they're like, I can't believe like you stood up to JP. And I was like, what are you talking about?
You're like, I'm just being me. What y'all talking about? But this is what I do.
What are you talking? And they're like, bro, you got guts going against JP. And I'm like, what are you talking? Who is JP? And they're like, who you were just talking to. And they're like, then they explain, he's the biggest millennial voice. He's brilliant. He, writes books and da-da-da-da-da-da. He's probably 40 something. And so I was just like, well, yeah, I mean, would have been great context to know that he's in a space where he's doing this all the time, with individuals, and, he does this defense thing every Friday and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, here I am just thinking that we're lollygagging. And in debate, especially like what we were doing, there's never, you don't do it to create a clear winner. It's just more so
just having a conversation,
it's tennis.
but it becomes debate.
Yeah. And it's tennis. You're just lobbing arguments here and there. It's not like everybody's voting on who's the winner or whatever. So I then hit my friend up. I'm like, bro, I can't believe you did that to me. And he just started laughing, and he was like, but I knew you would be able to, you would be good. I'm like, but I would have approached it differently if I knew. Just not too long ago, I'm with JP, and he never knew that it was set up. So he never knew it was a setup. Yeah. So I said, hey, you remember our first time meeting? He's like, oh yeah, debate. Oh my gosh. And I was like, it was I didn't know it either. I didn't know he would set me up against you, and I know for sure you didn't. And I was like, it was a setup debate, and he was like, that son of a gun. Our friend, he was pretty mad about it. So.
No, JP's a good dude. I met him probably the same time you did at a different event though.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we've kept in touch. He's a good dude, solid guy. But I didn't know who he was either. Because you and I are just in a complete.
We're not in like the Baptist
interesting
space.
That you and I, like we're in similar streams, and that's probably why we connected so well when we first met too.
Yeah, for sure.
We have a pretty large diet. Mm-hmm. But then there was that one diet that we're not familiar with, and it's that diet. That was the one I wasn't too familiar with either.
Yeah, I had no idea. I don't know what's happening at Passion in Atlanta and
Me
all
too.
that stuff.
All
I
that
don't
stuff
know.
is new for
I don't
me.
know any of that stuff. Yeah. And I celebrate it right here. I go, oh, that's great. I just don't know what's going on. In that
community
area.
was probably more like 3-4 years ago. Mm-hmm. For me, it was through Grant, our mutual friend Grant Skeldon.
Yeah,
he's the one that kind of introduced me more to that.
Yeah,
to that
for
stream
sure.
and JP and that crew. So
yeah, no, they're
different
dope.
world.
Yeah.
They're dope.
So when you started out your faith, if for me, Institutes of Christian Religion, which is a tough read, I don't recommend it to anyone. Mm-hmm. But really, for me, Spurgeon's lecture to my students was a big impact outside of modern day teachers, preachers. Is there anything for you that stood out that was a big impact?
Lectures to my students.
Okay.
Spurgeon, a lot of D.L. Moody. You ever
do Leonard Ravenhill stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Why Revival Tarries. I read that many, many times.
What's the one he
All
does
those
on
classics,
spiritual
bro.
depression? Is that him? Is that Leonard Ravenhill?
I haven't read one if that's from him. Calvin too. When I first got saved though, for the first 10 years of my faith, I was just I was reading everything and anything I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
I feel like the first 5 years, if I could retrace the most formative books, the one was called The Heavenly Man. You ever read that one?
No.
It's from a Chinese missionary. His book was pretty big in the mission stream. A.W. Tozer, Pursuit of God.
Yeah.
D.L. Moody stuff, Spurgeon stuff. I said I try to read Institutes.
Martin Lloyd Jones.
Oh yeah,
that's spiritual depression.
I thought that's what it was.
Yeah. I'm like, it's one of them. Yeah.
But then I was also hooked on sermons, and that was I don't know if I ever said this on the pod, but what was one interesting for me was so I was listening to Francis Chan. I don't even know how I got introduced to him, but I just started listening to him. I was also listening to Bill Johnson.
Oh my gosh. Right. So Bethel,
Weekly.
Gold Dust from the Sky.
I was also listening to Tim Keller.
Yeah.
I was also listening to T.D. Jakes. I was also listening to Mark Driscoll. I was also listening to Chandler. Literally, because I'm just saved. And we had no youth pastor at my church. So, it was anyone and everyone that I could listen to that fed my affections for Christ. Because I didn't have no framework for theology, doctrine, denominations, churches. I just fell in love with Jesus. And so I would literally listen to all of them probably on a daily basis, 1 to 2 sermons per day, every day, because I'm just so new to this. And then I go to Bible college, right? So I go to Bible college with a Bible degree. So now I'm reading commentaries and scholars and professors. But then these preachers are feeding my soul. And I remember it must have been 10 years ago. I was man, I didn't feel reformed enough. Right, in the Reformed community, so I was too charismatic for them. In the charismatic community, I was too Reformed.
Yeah.
In the missional community, I was too leadership focused. In the leadership community, I was too prayer focused. And I remember I was talking to my wife, and I was very clearly remember this conversation. I was like, honey, I don't feel like I belong in any stream. And the prophetic way that she is, or she was just trying to like stroke my ego and encourage me.
Yeah.
She said, maybe you don't belong to a stream because God's gonna one day God's gonna call you and use you to minister to all streams. And she was like, because that's who you've always been. Even as a kid, I had my crew, like as junior high school, like my gang, but I was cool with everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just my personality type. I think I could see the good and the bad and just choose to eat the meat throughout the bones. So I remember my wife would say, like, maybe you're going to minister to all the streams. And like 3-4 years ago, that started happening.
Yeah.
Right? I'm speaking at one of the largest Reformed churches in the world. And then I'm speaking at ARC.
Yeah.
And then I'm speaking at Exponential, which is all about missions. And then I'm speaking at this charismatic thing. And so people are always like, what are you? Like, where do you come from? I was like, I just immigrant Korean church and YouTube, baby. That's where I come from. I don't know if it's millennial, Gen Z. Like we were raised by like people we never knew. So my spiritual father is a Korean American, Brazilian missionary immigrant that pastored me. But then like my diet, probably listening to Keller on Monday, Gold Dust and Demons with Bill Johnson on Tuesday, back to Bishop Jakes on Wednesday, back to Francis Chan on Thursday, back to Driscoll telling you I'm a horrible man on Friday.
Terrible father.
Yeah, and then crazy. And then now I am who I am. And then but then the funny thing is then I go to seminary, and I remember like in like all my Bible classes, they'll be talking about these heretics.
Yes. Yeah.
And they'll name the heretics who have stirred my affections for Jesus more than any of these professors or any of these Bible classes. I remember they'd be talking about like Bishop Jakes or all these other people. And I'd be like, I'm so discombobulated at that time because I was like, wait, he's changed my life. His sermons have like, you know what I mean? So that's when I realized, oh, this is Christendom.
Yes.
There's such thing as like shooting at each other and like, and I remember thinking back in the day, I used to play like, what was it? The Counter-Strike? Remember Counter-Strike? And like friendly fire?
Yep.
Right? Some random troll, right? When the match starts, it starts shooting or starts flashbang. And I was like, this is what the church does. It's just like the enemy is right there and the world is right there. And Sunday
we all
ends.
point our guns to each other.
You just kill each other. And I was like, I don't want to be about that. Because for me, coming from where I came from, we're not arguing about those things. Like, just tell me how to get, like, I want to know Jesus. I want to quit drugs and root in my life, and I want to get healthy, you know?
Yeah.
But through all that, like you, I'm a kind of like nerdy, you know, and Strength Finder is my number one strength as a learner. And so and so the first 5-10 years, definitely, like, I didn't really know what I believed. I just knew who stirred my affections for Christ. Yeah. And now, like, okay, this, you know, after Bible degree and my MDiv, I know, like, where I land on things. Yeah. But our church, but I just don't fit into any box. I don't think you do either.
No.
Yeah, you're a Calvinist, but
yeah, I am.
But
well, there's a lot of you know, other than like our church, and then people who know me, it's like streams that are very hard line, like their stream. I think their pastors and their leaders really like me, but I think they get really scared of me in terms of their platform. Because they get scared of like what I would say that would be contrary to what they teach. So that's why, you know, I think there's a degree of a man, I call Adam on Monday and I get insight on like how should we be applying X, Y, Z technology and how should we, you know, communicate this or do this. But our conference, you know, like this pastors conference, like I don't know, he might rustle feathers. So it's like, I tell people all the time, because it's like, oh yeah, we, you know, like there's people, there are live people you hear of. And then, you know, I think a lot of times my name is more so murmured or whispered, but it's more so in a background, you know, thing, which I'm okay with. Like I gave up a long time ago trying to be, you know, something in terms of a public figure. For sure. I'm very happy with where I'm at in terms of a little bit of everything. My grandpa would call it a Heinz 57 because, you know, the Heinz ketchup is made with 57 ingredients.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
I bet you no one knows this.
So the ketchup Heinz, it's the big on the bottle has 57. It's because 57 ingredients. So growing up, because I'm part Spanish from Spain, Mexico, and then my mom white, but England and blah, blah, blah. So my grandpa, he'd say, you know, you're not Mexican, you know, and I'd be like, I know, Grandpa, I'm not Mexican. He's like, you're not Spanish either. You're Heinz 57. And he said, you're ketchup bottle.
It's prophetic.
He would say that growing up all the time.
yeah,
You're Heinz 57. You're Heinz 57. And I think that applies to like what you just said.
For sure.
I think there's something special about being a Heinz 57 that it says 57 ingredients. Like what stream, you know, are you in? I don't know. Like, man, I really respect them for this for that for that. And yeah, there's stuff that I'm against and I'm not for. And there are some streams I just absolutely would not rock with.
Yeah.
But I'm also not, you know, I know how much influence my voice carries. And so I know how catastrophic that could be if I just say, hey, I don't rock with this without any context, clarity, or anything else like that. Or just attacking a person, you know?
And I think there's a difference too. Like, I feel like if you, because we're both pastors, right? Not everyone in the audience is, but a lot of them tune in to hear like our pastoral perspective, even our pastoral lifestyles and how we go through things. For the most part, I feel like pastors mutually respect each other when they see that your primary calling is not to debate, is not to belong to a certain group, is to shepherd your flock.
Yeah.
Right. And the average believer who comes to your church is not going to be thinking about all these things that pastors do. Right. And that was one of my struggles too. When I first became a youth pastor, I was trying to disciple my people to become pastors, not followers of Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm trying to be a pastor.
Yeah.
So I think to disciple them is to make them like a church professional.
Correct.
But instead
and the highest form of glory is them going and doing their own church or church of yours or whatever. Yeah.
But in reality, I had to learn pastoral ministry to equip people to live out their Monday through Saturday lives in the world. Right.
Yeah.
And also the church is a part of it.
For sure.
But I just feel like if you and I are just focused on building our church, those arguments and those things aren't as important as I feel like they were. Because when we were coming up, that Reform Restless thing, and I used to get so frustrated with the certain streams where they felt like they were the guardians of truth.
Yeah.
Where they felt like my truth is the truth.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean my interpretation of scripture is the interpretation. And there's no room that you could be tripping. Or you could be off.
For sure.
Or you could be wrong. Or this could be cultural. Or this could be X, Y, and Z, you know?
Yeah.
And that stream was hard for me, even though that's the Reform stream. But that also, I was thinking about this too. I feel like everyone in their 20s has some sort of wokeism experience. Whatever that means. Right, if you grew up really conservative,
you don't mean that in a liberal sense. You just mean that like a
principle
black
sense,
in like
right?
the old school black term, like they woke up.
But it could categorically be used in any way. If you grew up like conservative in your 20s, you have this woke thing where now you're like, I want to be liberal. If you grew up liberal and then you go out in your 20s, now I want to be conservative. If you grew up charismatic, you want to be a Bible person. I feel like that's a common thing. Like people in their
like a pendulum.
Like a church person becomes a party animal. A party animal becomes a church person.
For sure.
And then you just kind of get it out your system. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you kind of mature out of it. And I feel like a lot of the restless reform people that we even looked up to, some of them even kind of came out of that as they got older too, where they're a little more open-minded, they're a little more cross-pollination.
For sure.
Versus when they were in their late 20s and early 30s.
Well, I think when you approach anything with pride, at some point life will humble you. So
100%.
A lot of individuals, whether it be the young and restless reformed, you know, they create these gods of individual leaders and movements. And even the past couple of years, some of the big leaders of, say, the reform movement have had moral failings or this or that, just like every other movement. But when it starts to hit close to home, you start realizing, well, I guess we aren't that perfect, because this guy was the picture of perfection, and he fell, and he's like, he had a moral failing, or he had this, and then there's a hump. Or in your own life, you know, I remember not too long ago, I was talking to someone who, to counterbalance their own. Basically, what happened was with their spouse, they came and talked to me, and basically the husband had an affair on his wife. Wife's really mad. They're both talking to me, and then when we're done, the man who had just had the affair goes, and Pastor Adam, you got to really get your eating in order. I heard you say you cheated and you had Chick-fil-A or something like that. I'm like, brother, don't worry about you just messed up big time.
Yeah.
But what he was trying to do was even out his transgression with another transgression.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I had an affair, but you're eating cookies. And it's like, and that's what we do is like, we try to, it sounds crazy, but it happens,
For sure.
This was a real conversation and I'm sitting there and I'm
at least I didn't kill somebody.
Exactly. And it's like,
at least I didn't get pregnant.
It's like, brother,
something to restore your dignity.
I'm trying to, and that's what pride does.
Yeah, for sure.
Like pride tries to seek reconciliation,
for sure.
As best as it can without feeling bad or sorrow or the impact. And it's like in all of these movements, because I even think of my dad, like my dad came from the Word of Faith movement. And when he had got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, we had came out, I remember the breaking point. We're at Cheesecake Factory in San Diego. I had started dating a girl. Caleb had started dating a girl. And my dad says, after months, we're at Cheesecake Factory. And my dad said, you're dating girls that are all equally yoked, right? Dad taught you, right? And we're, oh yeah. They're all Christians, right? Yeah, they're all Christians. They all go to church? Yeah, they all go to church. Caleb's girlfriend went to our church. My girlfriend went to another church. And she goes to church every single Sunday. And then he starts going like deeper. They all speak in tongues, right? Like, no, they don't speak in tongues. Well, what do you mean they don't speak in tongues? You guys speak in tongues, right? And then we're like,
you're like, not no more.
No, yeah. We're like, no.
I faked it for 10 years, Dad.
And he was like, wait a second, and then literally at that cheesecake dinner table, basically it's like, you think of just, we know societally, like a young LGBTQ person coming out to their parents and how scary that was equivalent
That's
in
what
our
it
household.
Felt like for you guys.
Yes.
In those particular things.
Yeah. Like we don't believe in healing. We don't believe, we're complete cessationalists. So didn't believe in any gifts, So in that moment, my dad, who has had cancer for 4 months, stage 4.
He was going through treatment during that time.
Going through chemo. And he looks at it and he goes, so you don't believe that, he said something to the degree of like, so you don't believe my faith is going to heal me? And we said, no, and I could see him like, I'm not saying anyone should do that. We were a-holes,
for sure.
But that's
you were
what
going
happened.
through your version of wokeism.
Exactly.
I'm joking, but yeah.
And to us, what my dad was going through meant what we were awakening to and being passionate about was more equal than compassion towards my dad.
Sheesh.
And just us being young and dumb. It's a little bit of everything, right? And I remember like his heart broke,
Sheesh.
But I say that to say, because my dad came from Word of Faith, so he was convinced that if he prayed enough, if he confessed enough, then he would be healed. And I think what's incredible what my dad does now, because then I go through my whole Reformed experience, we debate. We would debate all the time and clarify, like, I'm not saying that God can't heal you, but it is his choice and, this and that. And if he does do it, it's for his glory and yada. And I've over the years, I've come in the middle of, you should pray for healing. But it was this concept that my dad had believed, like Word of Faith people, that if I confess it, my confession will create a manifestation, which is New Ageism. At the end of the day, that's what that is. If you boil it down, it's a version of New Ageism that says your words create life in that sense. And there's some truth to that, but there's also not.
There's a perversion
and it has to be,
it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was, Dad, confess healing, believe for healing. I do that still to this day. When I pray for people, we confess healing. But it's a prayer and a confession, and it's a plea to the Lord for healing. It's less of I believe that I could I could create a Maserati in my driveway just by speaking it over and over. There's some truth to that. What you speak is where you go. Tend to be, But also you're replacing God's grace and His sufficiency for then just your manifestation. So like we spent years, like we had to clarify it. But I say that my dad was so staunch on it, and for so many years he wasn't healed, that he started a diet lifestyle with confession. He has all these incredible healing scriptures that he has memorized. It's like 192 or something like that. But like if you were to ask him today, and he does healing services all across America where he believes God for miraculous supernatural healing. But he will, to me, he gives a beautiful theology of, and we say it a lot at our church, do everything you can do so that God will do the rest. You know, a miracle is not just God, you know, taking you where you're at, and it's also your belief, your faith, and also your action. So you know, don't believe God for healing of diabetes, but then go eat a Snickers.
For sure.
Cut off the Snickers and believe God for healing.
For sure.
So my dad will share that, and then he'll say, and then we're going to believe God, then in this moment, by his will, he will heal us. So, but he used to be so extreme, and he was in his 50s, you know, like, but he had, through life and other experiences, it brought him to, I really think it's beautiful, this middle ground that I even agree, like he and I are so lined up theologically on this when, you know, 17 years ago, we were on just complete different islands. Now we hang on the same island, and his language about it is much better than mine now too. But reformed or this or that, it's like we all, if you walk in, if you have pride will humble you. For sure. But if you walk humbly, then you'll grow. For sure. And like the way you thought one time, it'll just grow. It's not that it'll change, but it'll grow, and you'll become more, which I believe, that's why I fell in love with theology. Theology is much more nuanced than Bible scholars. It's just black and white.
For sure. It's like it's either a both and or an and or. And I feel like you and your dad, through your guys' and your brother's relationship, you both were at this and or. Yeah. And then you guys went into both and. Right. Yeah. I remember when I was at Bible school, I forget what the name of the class was. I think it was called Johannine Literature. And you know, when you're in Bible school, 1 out of 4 classes turns into a student trying to debate the professor or another student. And like we were talking about, they were going back and forth, Calvinism and Arminianism. These students asking a professor, and they're just going. And then Calvinist kept quoting the Gospel of John. And the Arminian guy kept quoting Hebrews, right? And then my professor, I think at this point he was just having fun. Yeah. He was like, guys, I have a thought, right? He was like, what if John was a Calvinist and the author of Hebrews was an Arminian? He was like, they were like, what? No, he's like, that's what it sounds like right now, isn't it? And what if God doesn't fit in either of your guys' categories, and the Word of God is showing us both can be true at the same time, and that doesn't fit our Western category didactic type of way of thinking. And I'm in the back. I was like, that was such a, like he was making fun of them, but also he kind of like shut them down, and they both got so frustrated. And he was like, now you guys gonna have your conversation after this, right? And that was even for me, that journey of both and like you, your brother, and your dad. It's like, where can I grow where I'm lacking, but also stand firm in some of my convictions? And I just feel like that's a healthy way to continue to move forward in all of life. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like holistically, right? Like diet. Even right now, I'm dialing down on my diet. Dialing down. 36 feels different. Feels different, dog. I keep thinking like I'm living for my 40s. Yep. So I've been doing all this stuff. Like I've tried to steward every area of my life, but always one area is kind of, you know.
You be rocking that Korean skincare routine or what?
Nah, bro. People think
you gotta get on that, bro.
My wife has like 20 things. Like,
you guys invented skincare,
it's crazy. Bro. I just every now and then like, I'm like, honey, what is this? And it's on my face. She's like, that's for nighttime. I'm like, whatever. She's like, that's retinol. That's gonna burn your face during the day. I'm like, okay, take it off. Take it off. But like, it's just holistic. Because for me, it's like, I think the holistic theology part is healthy, but even like for me, holistic way of living for me is all about like stewarding and maximizing every area of my life for God's glory and for a kingdom impact, you know? And so
for sure.
Anyways, like I look at your dad, you could just tell that dude is like extremely healthy. Like I could just look. Oh yeah. You could just tell, which doesn't come from the Word of Faith movement, right?
No.
He's evolved and matured.
They eating at the Piggly Wiggly every weekend in the Word of Faith movement.
they're just anointing
catfish. They're like, they delete the calories by blessing it, bro. You know,
so you got to evolve and grow. You know
for sure. And And he did. And even like in his preaching and going deeper into the word. And it was more so, me and my brother's feedback, like, hey, our generation will more meat and bones, less stories and this. And my dad, he Word of Faith, the good thing about them is like, they probably have more scripture memorized than any other stream. Word of Faith guys, they honestly, they probably have half of the Bible memorized.
Yes,
but
I'm about to crack a bad joke, but I will refrain and practice the spirit of self-control.
yeah. You can share it anyway. But yeah, they have the Bible, but also what lacks is the exposition and the explaining the text. They just use it as. They just use it. They just here's it. And they can use a verse for anything, right? For why they can eat McDonald's. They just take a verse, right? All things that God has created is profitable and good. That's McDonald's. It's like use it for anything, and that's the bad side of it. But that's historically. But now over the years, it's like they've gotten so much better at just like Reformed people have gotten so much better.
Yeah.
Like my conversation, and you and I are in a lot of rooms where it's mixed denominations. I think it's fascinating that when you're part of when we're in more of when in the room, the more non-denominational kind of more charismatic guys are going, hey, we're doing more book studies as a church, teaching the church more so of a book at a time or whatever. And then I'm hearing from like more of the Baptist guys and the Reformed guys, like, we're actually having a service where we don't even teach the Bible. We just worship.
Worship, yeah.
And we let God. And then they'll, tell a story of like, and a guy came up by himself and said, I want to be saved. We didn't even bring the gospel.
And then the charismatic people are like, oh, we do that every week.
It's like, that's like, we'll do that during like
that's called
20-minute prayer.
For us. We have a 45-minute prayer and worship before service starts so people are getting healed. But that's the thing, like cross-pollination, right? Even that, because I know a lot of young pastors and leaders and even aspiring pastors and leaders, even business leaders listen to this, but I like, because when you meet a leader or anyone, like we automatically try to categorize them. Like what group do you belong to?
Yes.
Even financially, ethnically, but even like politically or
what's your job? What do you do for a living?
You do that.
Like, how can I put you in a category?
Yeah. But for me, I think leaders should be able to eat from every diet, right? Like I love learning about business, organizational leadership, and strategy. And you'll see me reading books like that. And the next day you'll see me reading books about spiritual formation and like therapy and counseling. And the next day you'll see me reading books on the Holy Spirit. Because I feel like leadership is about being versatile, especially in pastoral leadership in today's generation, right? So like expand your capacity, because I feel like people, this is just my little bit about my rebuke, right? People who are just stuck to one stream, sometimes I think it's just because their heart's too small. When you have a big heart and you want to reach all people, you want to learn from all different places and streams to be able to grow in your capacity to be able to love more people. You know what I mean? And so it's like... Yeah.
And I think for me, like when I was like really staunch in my Reformed, era, one of the things I didn't like was I didn't like not having an answer for everything. And like when you're just kind of in one stream, your stream tends to have compiled all of its answers for all of the world's issues and reasons, right? Like you're in the Word of Faith stream, someone didn't get healed, or they just didn't have enough faith. So that's a clear answer. You're in the Reformed circle and someone gets miraculously healed, it's well, there had to have been an answer for it. There's, go to the doctor and they'll tell you that,
or
X,
they
Y,
die
and Z.
and you say it was for the glory of God.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all that stuff, right? Because there's answers. Like in each little circle that we're in, we've composited all, but like the moment you start to go into another stream or another place and you start to realize like, wow, there isn't, answers for everything. There are some things that Paul says are too deep for too deep for understanding. I see through a glass that's dimly lit. All these things that's like, hey, there's mysteries of God that we don't always have the answer for. And a lot of times we don't like that answer. That we don't like the I don't know, because we think that shows that God doesn't have the answer. Just because I don't have the answer doesn't mean that God doesn't have the answer. I'm just aware enough to know, someone comes to me people come to me all the time. Like, I had a dream and here's what happened in the dream. Pastor, what do you think about it? I'm like, well, I'm not Joseph. I'm not a dream interpreter. So, and can God even talk to me there? I'm like, well, I mean, he does in the Bible, but and you answer, but at the same time, many times I'm like, I don't know. You should just go spend time in prayer and allow God to open your eyes and give you an answer for that. I can't, but we feel so uncomfortable. So, man, I don't know.
For sure. I think that's why 2020 was so healthy, particularly for me, because like you just said, I felt like I always needed to have the answer. And I think that's rooted for me in some of just my traumas and my issues where I felt incompetent, insignificant, and incapable. And so in 2020, it was so funny because no one had the answers, right? And the first one to like accept that and embrace that was the one that was able to kind of transition through this season well. Because now it's like, nothing works. Yeah. So let's get flexible. Let's start over and let's become like water. Let's see how this molds into the shape that it falls into. But the people who are like, this is how it's been. This is how it is. This is what it will be. Everything just kind of crumbled, right? And that's why I crumbled. Part of the reason why I crumbled. The anti-church online people. All of a sudden, they were buying, A10 minis and little cameras, and it was like, oh, your theology changed real fast once your giving changed. Welcome to church, family.
What I thought you were against this.
For sure. Did you ever see that picture of like growth mindset versus closed mindset image on Instagram?
No, I don't think so.
It's like 4 puzzle pieces. And they're like fit like this, and it says closed mindset. That's then it's a perfect box. Okay. And then the other one is where they're closed like this, but there's still spots, like places to puzzle onto. Okay. And it's called open mindset. Okay. Right. You can either go in and you're locked in, and it's the corner pieces. Yeah. Or you could be locked in, but you're in the middle pieces, and there's more rooms to add on more puzzle pieces to what you think you know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, for sure. And I feel like every person, but particularly leaders, business leaders, anyone who's in like a sphere of influence, that growth mindset is so critical. And even recently, I was talking to a young leader of mine that I mentor and I pastor, and I feel like I've given him everything that I can give. I've literally done the impartation. You've been with me for 5 years now. There really ain't much you're going to learn from me. Yeah. You're going to have to wait 10 more years for me to give you something new. And then one of my mentors, Glenn Packiam, said, at a certain point, you don't have one mentor. You have to have a constellation of mentors, right? Because now one person has all the strengths and gifts or resources that you need to learn from, right? They might still have that role that they played a significant moment in your life. They could be your spiritual father if you're saved under them. But at this point, you're outgrowing what their capacity has. So you need to have a constellation of relationships, right? So you want to learn about finances, learn from someone who knows finances. Right. You want to learn about fatherhood, learn from someone who knows about fatherhood. You want to learn about health, learn from someone who's good on health. You want to learn about church. And so you got to kind of evolve to expand your resources to learn from all different types of people. So I told him that. So I looked at my boy. I was like, look, because he was, I want to spend more time with you. I want to do. I was like, look, I spend more time with you than anyone outside my family. And he was like, and these other areas of growth, I really don't know how I can help you at this point. So expand your resources for you to get to that growth mindset and not just like from me alone or you alone. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that's really good. I get asked that all the time from people. Hey, Pastor Adam, are there any mentors you recommend? What do you think I should look for in a mentor? And because I'm always referencing my mentors and this and that, and like you just did as well. And my question is always, well, what type of mentor do you need? And people who ask the question, what to look for in a mentor, they're always thrown off by that question. What do you mean? I go, well, what type of mentor do you need? I just see a mentor. What type? For sure. And they go, I don't understand that. And to your point, like I go, what are you struggling in? Well, I'm struggling in all of it. Well, it's going to be very rare, depending on how much you're struggling. Maybe any mentor will be good for you in any field, like you can maybe get it. But the moment you start growing, you're more than likely going to outgrow that mentor or their capacity of in a particular area, what they can do for you, because this mentor may be really good at business, but they're on their 6th marriage. So definitely
don't take marriage
any marriage
advice,
advice.
and
Elon
take their
Musk,
business.
don't take any marriage
don't
advice.
Don't take raising kid advice.
Yeah,
don't take,
no.
and you should be cautious of his business life too, because whatever business advice he gives you, it may be at the altar of your marriage.
For sure.
And so just because someone has something that you want or you believe in, you also have to be, and not disrespect them. You can still learn from them, but in your own head, my dad growing up, he would call it chew the hay, spit out the sticks. You know, horses, when they're eating hay, there's sticks in there too. And they chew the hay, and then anything that's a stick, they just spit it out. And that's the maturity of a person. Not going, hey, you know, you just fed me a stick. I'm not receiving that. Like, you don't have to tell them that. Just mentally spit it out. But to that regard, it's evaluating. When I have a mentor, I need to be able to evaluate, like, what is it that I'm learning from them, and I want to learn from it, but also understand what is it they've sacrificed to get there. Am I willing to sacrifice at the equal Librium, or am I trying not to do that? So then therefore don't measure your success with your mentor's success. So as long as I, you know, own as many homes as my mentor. Well, your mentor has had 2 strokes and your mentor, you know, is on 3rd marriage or has gone through 3 bankruptcies. So they had these sacrifices that, you know, like, either you can learn from, if it's a mistake, you can learn from it, surely, but also be aware that, like, okay, am I headed down that same horizon if I don't find another mentor that can speak into my life, that I can balance these type of things?
This is like a topic I feel like we could talk about forever. I even tell people who are looking for mentors, become a mentee worth mentoring.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Because anyone that you want to be mentored by most likely doesn't have time or resources in this current season to spend time with you. So what you need to be is, you need to be the type of mentee that draws enough attention from someone that's like stages in front of you that will want to invest into you, right? So Grant used to always say this: you don't add people on your calendar, you include them in your calendar, right? So how did Jesus mentor his disciples? He didn't sit with them. He said, follow me. So he didn't add them to his calendar. He included them in his calendar, and they had to follow him. I always tell people, when Elijah says, let me get a double portion. Right? Elisha says to Elijah, let me get a double portion. And Elijah says, if you are there when I go up, you're going to get a double portion. And I was like, why did he say that? He's like, because mentorship is caught, not taught. You need to be so close to me at all times. Wherever I'm going, you got to follow me, and you're going to start.
TDJ, get ready.
I was going to go right to a bishop illustration too. And then you're going to start getting an impartation.
TDJ coming out right now. That's why.
It's coming out, dude. Right?
I can tell.
And then when he got caught up, he got the double impartation because he was around him for so long, right? So in order for you to get mentorship, you got to have the type of hunger, the type of zeal, the type of fire. They say good leaders start fires, great leaders fuel fires. So a potential mentor sees a fire in you, they're gonna fuel that, because fueling fire doesn't take as much energy, but there's a greater investment because you're investing into someone else that's gonna reap back to you. Right? But then if you're stale, if you're not going nowhere,
I'm always restarting that fire.
If you're
rekindle this thing. When we left the conversation, you were so ready to go. Now you're not.
So it's a whole different. You got to be a mentee worth. So even Jesus sent people home, but the 12 were all hungry. He's all right. You I could feed. You I could raise up. And there's other things I remember.
Where's my Bishop Jakes illustration?
Story. So when I met Bishop for the first time, and by first time I mean the only time I met Bishop, like I have a relationship with him. You know, I was at, did I ever share this on the story, on pod?
On the pod? If you did, it would have been like
long
over a year ago.
But I went to Project Gideon, and then like there's like 300 leaders there, and I was like, man, I want to like meet Bishop. So I did what like Ruth did to Boaz. You know, I got to do what I got to do to get attention from him, right? So I looked at the pamphlet, and I was like, oh, all right. The Jake's family, Cora, his wife, Sarita, and Sarah, they're doing like a family workshop. I was like, he's probably going to be at that one. So I leave my session and I start walking towards that, and I see him in the hallway. So it just out of my belly, dog, just Bishop, it just came out. It just came out. All the security, all the ushers are like trying to stop me. They think I'm a stalker. The Bishop just starts walking towards me, and I'm like freaking out. My legs are. I was like, oh, this is what like junior high girls feel like when they see Justin Bieber. Like that's what I felt like. My legs were shaping. I started stuttering, like how people feel when they see BTS or Blackpink, right?
Yeah, your mind just goes blank.
And then like I'm like borderline having a panic attack,
Yeah.
right? I'm like Bishop, and I started quoting all his sermons just in my hard drive somewhere. And he was like, calm down, son, calm down. I'm like, whew. I just want to say thank you, Bishop. That's all I want to say. And he goes like, I like you. And he's like, why did you come to this gathering and not any of my other gatherings, like my ILS Leadership Summit? I was like, because this is his most intimate, smallest gathering I could get. He's like, And he was like this, follow me, son. He's like, you follow me long enough, we become family.
Yeah.
He's like, come to all my events and we'll become family. And then he hits up his assistant, get his number, and then all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's my point is, Bishop is like, look, I don't got no time.
Yeah.
But I see that you're hungry.
Yeah.
I see that you're willing to kind of inconvenience yourself to receive something.
Yeah.
And follow me and you're going to get it. And the last thing I'll say for people who are always looking for mentors who are listening, I was like 20, I must have been like 21, 22, 23. Because a lot of people, like for me, I grew up I came up in a Korean American immigrant church.
Yeah.
No resources, no pastors, no access, no.
Yeah.
12 junior high youth kids and like 4 high school kids. That was how I came up for 5-6 years. And I remember when I was like 22, 23, I was traveling everywhere, guest speaking, in that Korean American youth circuit. I remember I was on the airplane, I think it was from New York to like LA. And I just remember thinking like, and this is some of my ego you're going to hear, but just my inner dialogue with God was, God, I don't have any friends who are in my age bracket and at that time in my world who's doing what I'm doing. And one, I feel lonely, and a part of me is also thanking God. And then I remember having a thought there, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm in this stage, even though none of my real life peers are, because my friends have become all these authors. That was when I was reading Spurgeon and Moody and Tozer and Ravenhill. And I was receiving indirect mentorship through people I didn't know because I was devouring their content, right? So even though you might not be able to meet your heroes in person, you can still learn from them, from their content and from what they do. Even people who listen to this pod, right? Yeah. So I would just say, like, you just got to have that hunger.
Well, there is. I mean, there's enough individuals who are kind of pouring their life out into content that that can, like fully, for the most part, I think, bring an appetite. What a lot of people are looking for is, here's what I found oftentimes is people believe that their circumstance and situation is so specific that it takes someone to know them and give them direct advice on their direct, like, oh yeah, but let me tell you how specific my situation is. And the problem is a lot of those individuals aren't worth investing time in, because if you can't listen to content or read a book and use that as motivation to move forward, then the reality is me telling you what to do, black and white, more than likely isn't going to change much.
For sure.
It's I hear that all the time from people. They say, hey, I want you and Ashley to mentor my relationship. And then I go, well, we're one of the only people in America that spend an hour a week.
Every week
talking about our marriage and our relationship. More than likely, if you listen to that, if you sit with us, there's really nothing else we can add. But then it's normally followed by, but our situation is unique because of X, Y, and Z. And it's always like, the real answer normally, sometimes it is, but normally is your situation is not that unique. None of us are in so much of a unique situation that we can apply the right principles to our life to grow. Like it just,
Yeah. Go ahead.
And sometimes but if you do need specific advice, it's normally because you are doing something in a great way uncommon.
For sure.
It's normally not problem. Normally it's fruitfulness.
For sure.
And you need a mentor to speak into the fruitfulness that's very specific. But normally problems, principally solutions go across the board with a lot of problems.
And I even, just this thought came to my mind. If you find yourself wanting to be mentored by someone famous or successful, you're not actually looking for mentorship. You're trying to heal a daddy wound that's inside of you. Yeah. And the idea of them knowing you is filling an emotional vacancy, and you're actually using the thought or the association of knowing them to feed something that's broken inside.
Yeah.
Right? And that's you're never gonna find that.
Yeah.
You need to, because there's so many mentors all around you.
Yeah.
But the problem is you're actually looking for someone famous or successful. Rather, you should just look to your left and right and find someone 2 steps ahead of you.
Yeah.
And just be like, yo, I just want to learn how you're doing this.
Yeah.
And then you grow and you grow and you grow.
Yeah.
And so, and the reason why I know that is because I've done that. I will ask myself, like, why do I want to be around all these successful and powerful people? It just strokes my ego. It makes me feel important. It makes me feel significant. It makes me feel nice to drop a name here and there. And I can't do anything with that relationship. And once I've done the inner work, now that I have certain relationships, I will tell my wife, like, hey, I have access to this person, but I'm not going to pull on it yet. Because what's that going to do? It's going to make me feel special, but drain their energy.
Yeah.
So I'll tell my wife, like, there are certain relationships that I have access to. And these are levels, and these are leaders at like 10 levels above me.
For sure.
And I will tell my wife, I'm going to wait 5 to 6 years because I still need to level up.
For sure.
If I'm at 1, they're at 10, I'll hit them up when I'm at 7.
Yeah.
Because if I hit them up at level 1 at 10, they're going to be like, look, man.
There's 20 other people you can ask that question to.
Talk to someone 2 steps ahead of you.
Yeah.
And then come here.
Yeah.
And then talk to someone 1 step ahead of you.
Yeah.
And
let me know when you're ready to buy your first building type of stuff. Or let me know when, it's like,
Exactly.
yeah, for sure.
And it takes a level of self-awareness and humility to accept that you're not here. And it takes a level of like, I don't know what the right word is, but just, I guess, EQ to know like, oh, this person just strokes my blank. So sometimes I'll be like, people will be like screenshotting, oh my gosh, so-and-so liked my post. Or so-and-so reshared my post. And I'm like,
yeah.
Great. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, just be aware that you're celebrating the wrong thing. Right?
For sure.
Celebrate.
And be aware to your point, like, be aware why you want that specific mentor or person to speak into your life, and be prepared to run at their rate if you start to ask them advice. And to your point, like, there's a few people that I've got to meet that are like heroes to me in terms of the impact they've made as a church and a leader. And I've been in the room, quite a few times with them and have had conversations. And sometimes Ashley will be like, did you ask any questions about like what season we are in a church or whatever? And I tell her no, because even what we're doing, which in our eyes is very significant, very beautiful, to them, we're still in elementary school.
For
and whatever problems we're having, there's a lot of other people that could help us. To them, they would answer it, but and that's how I would feel a lot of times. Like if I'd go to certain things, I'd think to myself, like, what am I even doing in this room?
Yeah.
But obviously you're just stretching your capacity. But
sure.
I would never think when I'm done, I'm going to go to the person that's sharing and be like, hey, can you mentor me? If I was let's just say I'm in real estate and I invest in homes. I'm not going to go to the guy who, has 300 apartment complexes and yada, 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 and say, can you mentor me? I may have a question for him for advice and he'll answer it in 5 minutes or less. But I say, hey, can you mentor me? And then they're like, well, how many homes have you purchased? You're like, none. I don't have any investment. They'd be like, well, let me know when you at least have maybe, 30.
Yeah.
And then I'll let you know how you can graduate to X, Y, and Z. So I think a lot of times to me, it's a step forward and it's one step. We just think, let me go for in my eyes, whatever is the most successful version of that. And I'll chase after that. For sure. Because they think then that the information will be bottomless, bottomless mimosas or bottomless chips at Chili's, type of thing. But it's like, no, go for the person that's 2 steps ahead of you.
For sure.
That you can learn from, and then they'll pour into you, and more than likely they have more availability than another person to pour in you. And then it's okay at a certain time, like you did with that young brother, to be like, hey, I feel like I pretty much taught you everything that I have. Might be time to graduate or diversify your toolbox and start learning a deeper aspect to what you've learned from me. And that's great advice to be like, hey, what you're asking, I don't really have the answer to.
Sure.
You should go find someone else for that aspect.
Yeah, I could talk about this forever, dude. I don't even know what our time is, but
we're good. We're pretty much there.
One of
We're
my
there.
other last thoughts is because I read about stuff like this, and you and I, we're both pioneer types, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I've like literally had to pioneer from like with sand and mud, you know? Like just out here, just freaking dirts in my nail. And I would say like, even in the development phases of leadership, there's like so many different types of people. Some people, they're just working so hard and they don't even network.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some people, they're not working hard at all.
They just network. They're always at everything.
And they're looking for opportunities, right?
Yeah.
I tell people who are working hard, because this is me for like 10 years, I just worked and worked, like preaching like 100 times a year as a youth pastor, like preaching at overseas on the mission field all over the world in different languages and cultures, And then some of my friends, hey, you got to get out there. You got to get out there. I'm like, nah, bro, I got to take care of my people. And the way you know you got to network is when you hit a ceiling. And now working hard doesn't get you better, right? And Robert Clinton talks about all emerging leaders that he's ever studied. At a certain point, they hit a ceiling and God outsources a relationship to take them to that next level. And he calls it the divine sponsor, right? In many ways, that was Jonathan to David, right? Or that was Barnabas to Paul. And God would bring a leader to open a door, but it's a supernatural thing. It's not a human thing. And once that door opens, leaders who are a few steps ahead of you, they look, they're like, where you been this whole time? Right? And then there's like, I've been doing my thing. And now, because they're levels ahead of you, they could see things in you that you didn't even realize that were in you. And that's when networking is important, right? And so for me, what I've learned is I build, so, plow, hit the ceiling, and God opens this door, kind of takes me to that next step, and I go back into the cave again at that next step. Build, so, hit a ceiling, peek my head out again, God connects a few people, one more step up. Build. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
I don't know if this is even true. I think someone told me Kendrick, he records an album and he disappears for like 2 years. Because he knows like...
Well, I think that's Adele. I think she...
Was that Adele
I think
too?
she tours for 6 months and then she goes away for 7 years or 8 years and just chills, and then she comes back, releases an album, tours for 2 years or whatever, and then takes 9 years. So I think what does she have? Like only like 3 or 4 albums.
And
but
that's how they
been in the
create
industry.
masterpieces, right?
Yeah,
Because
they
if you
just go in the
open
lab.
like Henry Nouwen says, if you open the door of the steam bath too often, there's no heat inside. So you got to close that door for an extended season to let it heat burn. So when you open it, this heat comes out. And a lot of young leaders, the door's wide open, dog. So you don't
information, but they're staying at the same level consistently.
You don't need to post every thought you had about the scriptures Monday through Saturday if you're in your 20s. You know what I mean? Like, hold that fire in. So when you do speak, people are like, oh, this dude, this girl, they've been marinating.
And live enough life that wisdom, merges with information. Information is one thing, wisdom is another.
Totally different thing.
And there's a lot of people who nowadays with YouTube and everything, we have a lot of information, just lack wisdom. 20-year-old would know everything about anything, but how does that apply? When do I use it? When's the right time for that? How does that go? How do you go one level? I don't know. I don't have no wisdom. I haven't gotten through life enough to see how this applies truthfully. I was very ungracious as a Reformed person until I fell into sin as a believer and needed grace. And then it was like, oh shoot, we all need this thing. It was like, it was wisdom that taught me that I didn't know it all. And there's an element of forgiveness and grace that I was missing, but life, going out and living life and applying these things is what grew me, and allowed God to nurture me. And it wasn't based off of how much I knew. It was about how much did I apply this in my life? Then you grow in that same way. Be times I'd mentor people and I'd say, we meet, and then 90 days later we meet again. I was like, hey, tell me, did you do what we talked about? Well, I haven't had time and I've been working. I was like, okay, this is our last meeting.
For sure.
We're not going to do this.
For sure.
Like, we ain't buddies. We're not friends. Because I have mentors and I don't do that to them.
For sure.
So it's not that I'm expecting you something that I don't do. When I'm in my mentors, when they tell me go left, I go left. And if I have doubt about going left, I follow back up with them and tell them why I had doubt and had them help me a little bit more. But I'm like, you don't you don't get relationship and then also get to dictate the speed at which that relationship
sure.
goes. When they say run, like you got to run. And when you come back, oh, I decided to walk. Then they'll be like, okay, then go find a mentor that wants you to walk because I don't.
Yeah, this is dude. You and I could talk about this forever because we like we're in this.
Yeah.
From the teens to 20s, and now we're in our 30s. So we're kind of hitting this transition in our leadership, phase. And then it's interesting too, because like messaging like this could be countercultural for the moment, because there's now like burnout.
Yeah.
And like this hustle culture is bad for you.
Yeah.
And again, it's about holistic. It's a both and. I just heard John Tyson. He said, "Don't worry about burnout if you don't burn yet."
Yeah.
Right? Because
for sure.
if you're not burning, don't worry about burnout.
Yeah.
Burn for a season.
Yeah,
you
for
know what I
sure.
mean? I think John Wesley said, "Put a man on fire, and the whole world will come and watch him burn."
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like, because Beloved and my life and my tempo is all about holistic living.
Mm-hmm.
It's about Sabbath and wholeness. But you look at I'm hustling.
Yeah.
I'm working.
Yeah.
Drove an hour to be here. I'm gonna drive an hour back home, and I'm a sermon prep, pick up my kids. So people are like, they hear our messaging of this generation, pace yourself.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, but you better be.
But you have to be at a pace. Pacing yourself is meant to be at a pace, not at nothing.
Yeah, not at nothing. So sometimes I'll be like mentoring young leaders, and I look at I'm like, no, yeah, you're living out a part of what I'm speaking.
Yeah.
But this other part, like, what you doing on your free time?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What you doing on
Get your butt out there.
Yeah, do something. Put some work in. You know what I mean?
For sure.
David didn't become David overnight. He was killing lions and bears before he killed Goliath. You know what I mean? So it's like, put in your work, put in your hours, so when the opportunity comes, God accelerates you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Anyways, this mentorship stuff I could talk about.
That's right on, bro. Maybe we'll do. Maybe if people got questions or comments, we'll do another future episode and dig deeper in it. I'm with you. Like, and we're, you and I are pastors, so we teeter between, teaching the Bible, teaching the Word, and then a lot of what we're doing, we put it in the discipleship category, but it's also another way of saying mentorship. So it's something you and I are doing regularly with individuals, and so we've gotten good mentees and we've gotten bad mentees, and I've gotten great mentors and I've gotten not so great mentors, and all that kind of stuff like that. And there's 2 mentors I still have on my horizon. I just don't feel like I'm there yet, but they know who I am. When we see each other, I ask a question or two, but I'm not at the place where I have their number yet or anything like that. One of them I actually had dinner with last month, and I asked some questions, but not at the degree that I wanted to. God just like, it's not time. And so anyone, they think, no, if you had the opportunity, you need to jump at it. To me, I'm like, no. In that case, my head would spin, and then I'd be impatient with where I'm at in the season I'm at, because I'm like, they're telling me I should be at X, Y, and Z, and so now I'm hating everybody I work with and hating everybody I lead, because you're supposed to be like, and it's like there's timing for everything.
100%. That's wisdom.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, everybody, I never said welcome to Beyond the Letter, so welcome to Beyond the Letter, and
we just jumped right into it, Tom. We're on fire
today.
Just
talking. Everybody, thank you for joining us as always. Will Chung in the house, myself. We had Andy in here and Nancy. Sammy ended up rolling through after he had coffee with our boy Dan Fernandez. Sir. Was it good? It was good. That's my guy, Light Pacific University.
Dan's a good dude.
He was having coffee with the pastor of the school that I went to originally, which now I sit on the board. We have a great relationship with Light Pacific. I love everything that they do. If you're thinking about going to college, check out Light Pacific University. All right, everybody, peace.
Peace.